Danny Martinez rolled his mobility chair closer to the table and smiled at his mother. The 12-year-old boy had been looking forward to this dinner for weeks. Earth's Kitchen was the most popular human restaurant on Nexus Prime space station, and today was his birthday. Lisa Martinez reached across the table and squeezed her son's hand. She watched as Danny's eyes lit up while he looked around the busy restaurant. The place was packed with humans and aliens from all over the galaxy. Purple-skinned Zeltharians sat next to blue-scaled Corthians, while insect-like mantoids clicked their mandibles as they enjoyed human food. "Mom, look at that table over there," Danny whispered excitedly. "Those are real Andromedans. I read about them in my Space Cultures book. They can live for 300 years. Lisa smiled. Her son had always been fascinated by alien species. Even though his spinal condition kept him in a mobility chair, Danny never let it slow down his curiosity about the universe. He spent hours reading about different planets and their people. The restaurant buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Universal translators hummed softly as they converted alien speech into human words. The smell of Earth spices mixed with exotic alien seasonings filled the air. Holographic displays showed beautiful views of Earth's oceans and forests, making the human diners feel less homesick. Danny adjusted his position in his chair and picked up the menu. His legs didn't work like other kids his age, but his mind was sharp as a laser. He had already memorized most of the alien species that visited the station. The other human families often brought their children to meet Danny because he could tell them amazing facts about their alien neighbors. "What are you going to order, sweetheart?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Danny always ordered the same thing when they came here. Space burger with asteroid fries. Danny grinned. And maybe some of that fizzy blue drink the Zeltharians like. A young man approached their table carrying a datapad. Kyle Peterson was new to the restaurant staff, having arrived on the last transport from Earth. He was tall and thin, with short brown hair and cold gray eyes. Kyle had only been working at Earth's Kitchen for 2 weeks, but he had already made it clear that he didn't like his job. "Yeah, what do you want?" Kyle said without looking up from his datapad. His voice was flat and uninterested. Lisa blinked in surprise. The other waiters at Earth's Kitchen were always friendly and welcoming. This was different. "We'd like to order dinner, please," Lisa said politely. "It's my son's birthday today." Kyle finally looked up from his pad and saw Danny in his mobility chair. His expression changed immediately. A look of disgust crossed his face as he stared at the boy. "Oh, great," Kyle muttered under his breath. "Another one of these." Danny's smile faded slightly, but he tried to stay cheerful. "Hi there, I'm Danny. I've never seen you here before." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, maybe you should have called ahead. This table is really meant for normal customers who don't need all this extra space." The words hit Danny like a punch to the stomach. His mother's face went red with anger, but before she could speak, Kyle continued. "Look, lady, maybe you should have just ordered takeout instead of bringing him here. You're making other customers uncomfortable." Kyle gestured around the restaurant with his datapad. Danny looked around quickly. The alien customers were indeed watching their table, but not with discomfort. The Zeltharians looked confused, tilting their large heads as they tried to understand what was happening. A group of mantoids had stopped eating entirely and were staring at Kyle with their compound eyes. "Excuse me?" Lisa's voice was sharp. "What did you just say about my son?" Kyle shrugged. "I'm just saying this is a nice restaurant. People come here to have a good time, not to stare at." He looked down at Danny again. "Not to deal with situations like this." Danny felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. He had faced rude comments before, but never like this. Never in front of so many people, both human and alien. His hands gripped the arms of his mobility chair tighter. "There's nothing wrong with my son," Lisa said, her voice getting louder. "He has every right to eat here just like anyone else." Sure, Kyle said with fake agreement. "But maybe next time you could sit in the back corner or something. You know, where you won't be in the way." The restaurant was getting quieter as more people noticed the argument. A table of human businessmen stopped talking and turned to watch. The Zeltharian diplomats were whispering to each other in their musical language, their translator devices working overtime. Danny wanted to disappear. This was supposed to be a special day, his birthday dinner at his favorite restaurant. Instead, he was being treated like he didn't belong here, like he was some kind of problem that needed to be hidden away. "Kyle Peterson," came a voice from behind them. It was the restaurant manager, Betty Walsh, hurrying over with a worried expression. "What's going on here?" "Nothing, boss," Kyle said quickly. "Just trying to help these customers figure out a better seating arrangement." Betty looked at Lisa's angry face and Danny's hurt expression. She had worked at Earth's Kitchen for 5 years and knew the Martinez family well. Danny was one of their most beloved regular customers. "Danny, happy birthday," Betty said warmly, completely ignoring Kyle. "I saved a piece of chocolate cake just for you." But the damage was already done. Danny could feel dozens of eyes watching him. Some of the alien customers looked confused and concerned. They had heard stories about human cruelty, but many had hoped those stories weren't true. In a corner booth, a man with kind eyes and graying hair watched everything unfold. He had been quietly eating his dinner and reading reports on his data tablet, but now his full attention was on the scene at Danny's table. The man's name was Jake Sullivan, and he was someone very important in the human diplomatic community. Jake had spent years working to build good relationships between humans and alien species. He had seen what happened when humans showed their worst side to the galaxy, and right now he was watching one young man undo months of careful diplomatic work with his cruel words. The alien customers were already updating their reports about human behavior. Jake could see the Zeltharian diplomats making notes on their devices. This incident would be discussed in alien government meetings across the galaxy. Something had to be done, and it had to be done now. Jake Sullivan sat in his corner booth and watched Kyle Peterson continue to treat Danny Martinez with cruelty. The 50-year-old man had seen many terrible things during his career as a human diplomat, but watching a child be humiliated in public always made his blood boil. Jake was not just any human on Nexus Prime Station. He was Commander Jake Sullivan, one of the most respected humans in the galaxy. For the past 15 years, he had worked to build bridges between Earth and alien civilizations. His name was known on dozens of worlds, and his reputation for fairness and kindness had helped humanity earn respect among the stars. But right now, Jake was watching one foolish young man destroy years of careful work. He picked up his coffee, cup with steady hands, and took a small sip. Jake had learned long ago that anger was a powerful tool, but only when used at the right moment. He needed to think carefully about what was happening at Danny's table and what it meant for humanity's future. At the table next to Jake, 3 Zeltharian diplomats were speaking in low voices. Their purple skin had turned a darker shade, which Jake knew meant they were upset. The Zeltharians were one of humanity's most important allies, and they had always believed that humans were naturally kind and protective of their weak. "This confirms the reports from the Andorian sector," one Zeltharian said, his words translated by the universal device on his collar. "Humans abandon their damaged offspring. They treat them as burdens instead of treasures. Perhaps we were wrong about their species," another Zeltharian replied. "The stories of human compassion might just be propaganda." Jake felt his chest tighten. The Zeltharians were wrong, but he couldn't blame them for thinking this way. Kyle Peterson was showing them the worst side of humanity, and they were judging all humans based on one person's actions. Across the restaurant, a family of Korthians with blue-scaled skin were also watching the scene. The mother held her young child closer as Kyle continued to be rude to Danny. Korthians valued family bonds above everything else, and they protected their children with fierce loyalty. Seeing a human adult be cruel to a human child was deeply disturbing to them. "Maybe we should not send our children to human schools," the Korthian father whispered to his mate. "If this is how they treat their own young, what would they do to ours?" Jake closed his eyes for a moment and remembered why he had dedicated his life to diplomatic work. 20 years ago, when humans first made contact with alien species, many civilizations wanted nothing to do with Earth. They had heard stories, about human wars, human slavery, and human cruelty. It took decades of patient work to show them that humans were capable of great kindness and love. Jake himself had grown up with a younger brother who had been born with a condition similar to Danny's. His brother Tommy had used a wheelchair his whole life, but Jake had never seen him as disabled or broken. Tommy was brilliant, funny, and brave. He became a famous scientist who helped design the first human spacecraft that could travel to other star systems. When Tommy died in a research accident 5 years ago, Jake promised himself that he would always stand up for people who needed protection. His brother had taught him that strength came in many forms, and that the strongest humans were often those who faced the biggest challenges. Now Jake watched Kyle Peterson lean closer to Danny's table and say something that made the boy's shoulders slump with sadness. Lisa Martinez looked like she wanted to throw her drink in Kyle's face, but she was trying to stay calm for her son's sake. The restaurant was getting quieter as more customers noticed the argument. Even the background music seemed softer than before. Jake could see alien customers throughout the dining room turning to watch what was happening. Some looked confused, others looked disgusted, and a few looked scared. At a table near the kitchen, 2 mantoid traders were clicking their mandibles in a pattern that Jake recognized as deep concern. The mantoids were insect-like beings who communicated through sound and body language. Their clicking was getting faster and more urgent as they watched Kyle's behavior. "The human spawn is being rejected by his own kind," one mantoid clicked to his companion. "This confirms the intelligence reports about human social hierarchy. They eliminate the weak from their groups. We should report this to the mantoid." "Council," the other replied. "Our trade agreements with humanity may need to be reconsidered." Jake knew that news of this incident would spread far beyond Nexus Prime Station. The mantoids had one of the fastest communication networks in the galaxy. Within hours, alien governments on dozens of worlds would hear about what happened in Earth's kitchen tonight. The diplomatic consequences could be enormous. Several alien species were already nervous about working with humans. They worried that humanity's violent history meant that all humans were dangerous and unpredictable. Kyle's treatment of Danny would seem to confirm their worst fears. Jake thought about all the human children who lived on alien worlds, attending alien schools and making alien friends. If other species decided that humans were naturally cruel to their own kind, those children might face discrimination or worse. Human families might be forced to leave colonies they had called home for years. He also thought about the human soldiers and diplomats working throughout the galaxy. Many of them had spent years building trust with alien communities. That trust could be destroyed in a single night because of one person's cruel actions. Jake looked at his data tablet, which was filled with reports from human colonies and diplomatic missions. He had been working on a proposal for a new cultural exchange program that would bring alien students to Earth universities. The program could help thousands of young beings learn about human culture and values. But if this incident became a scandal, the program would never be approved. Alien parents would never trust their children to human care. Jake watched Kyle Peterson point at Danny's mobility chair and make another cruel comment. The boy was trying not to cry, but Jake could see tears forming in his eyes. Lisa Martinez was getting angrier by the second, and Jake knew she was about to explode. That was when Jake Sullivan made his decision. He had not become one of humanity's most respected diplomats by staying silent when cruelty happened in front of him. He had earned his reputation by standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. Jake stood up from his booth slowly and deliberately. His movement caught the attention of several alien customers who recognized him immediately. The Zeltharian diplomats stopped their conversation and watched him with interest. The mantoid trader's clicking slowed to a curious whisper. Commander Jake Sullivan was about to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. Jake Sullivan walked across the restaurant floor with quiet confidence. His footsteps were steady and purposeful, and everyone in the dining room seemed to sense that something important was about to happen. The conversations at nearby tables grew quieter as he approached Danny's table. Kyle Peterson was still standing next to the Martinez family, holding his datapad and looking annoyed. He had just finished telling Lisa that maybe she should consider finding restaurants that were more suitable for people like her son. Danny was staring down at his hands, his face red with embarrassment and hurt. "Excuse me," Jake said in a calm, clear voice that carried across the restaurant. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here." Kyle turned around, ready to tell whoever was interrupting him to mind their own business. But when he saw Jake Sullivan standing behind him, the words died in his throat. Kyle's face went pale, and his datapad nearly slipped from his hands. Everyone on Nexus Prime Station knew Commander Jake Sullivan. His picture was on the walls of the diplomatic quarter. His speeches about human-alien cooperation were taught in schools throughout the galaxy. He had negotiated peace treaties that saved millions of lives and had represented humanity at the Galactic Council for over a decade. "Commander Sullivan," Kyle stammered, his voice suddenly much smaller than before. I didn't know you were here." Jake smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that made people realize they had made a very big mistake. "Oh, I'm here quite often, actually. I enjoy coming to Earth's Kitchen because it reminds me of what humanity is supposed to represent." The restaurant was now completely silent. Every human and alien customer was watching the scene unfold. The Zeltharian diplomats had stopped eating and were recording everything on their devices. The Mantoid traders had stopped clicking entirely, which meant they were paying very close attention. Jake looked down at Danny and his expression softened immediately. "Hello there, young man. I'm Jake Sullivan. What's your name?" Danny looked up with surprise. He had never met anyone as famous as Commander Sullivan before. "I'm Danny Martinez, sir. Today's my birthday." "Happy birthday, Danny," Jake said warmly. 12 years old, I'm guessing? That's a very important age. When I was 12, I thought I knew everything about the universe." He chuckled softly. "I was very wrong about that." Lisa Martinez was staring at Jake with amazement. She had seen him on news broadcasts from across the galaxy, but she never imagined she would meet him in person. "Commander Sullivan, I'm so sorry about this situation. This waiter has been very rude to my son." Jake nodded and turned his attention back to Kyle. The young waiter was sweating now, realizing that he had just insulted a disabled child in front of one of the most powerful humans in the galaxy. "Kyle Peterson, isn't it?" Jake said, reading the name tag on the waiter's uniform. "You're new here on Nexus Prime. Just arrived from Earth a few weeks ago, according to your station records." Kyle nodded miserably. He had no idea how Commander Sullivan knew his background, but he was too frightened to ask. "Tell me, Kyle," Jake continued, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel underneath. "What do you think it means to be human? What do you think makes our species special in this galaxy?" Kyle opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had never thought about questions like that before. All he knew was that he was in serious trouble. "Let me tell you what I've learned in my years of working with alien species," Jake said. "I've traveled to hundreds of worlds and met thousands of different beings. Do you know what they all have in common? They all judge humanity based on how we treat each other." Jake gestured toward the alien customers throughout the restaurant. "Those Zeltharian diplomats over there? They're writing reports about human behavior that will be read by their government leaders. Those Mantoid traders? They'll tell their families and business partners about what they saw here tonight. Every alien in this room is forming opinions about our entire species based on your actions." Kyle looked around the restaurant and saw dozens of alien eyes watching him. For the first time, he understood that his behavior was about more than just one customer complaint. "But Commander," Kyle said weakly, he's disabled. He takes up extra space and other customers might feel uncomfortable." Jake's expression hardened. "Uncomfortable? Kyle, let me tell you about uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is explaining to an alien parent why their child was beaten up at a human school because someone taught them that humans don't value different kinds of people. Uncomfortable is watching trade agreements fall apart because other species think we're cruel to our own kind." The restaurant was so quiet that everyone could hear the hum of the air recycling systems. Jake stepped closer to Kyle, and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. "Uncomfortable is having to look at myself in the mirror every night and wonder if I've been lying to the galaxy about what humanity really is." Danny watched this exchange with wide eyes. He had never seen an adult defend him so strongly before. Usually, when people were rude to him, his mother would handle it alone. But here was one of the most important humans in the galaxy, standing up for him in front of everyone. Jake turned away from Kyle and knelt down next to Danny's mobility chair. When he spoke to the boy, his voice was gentle and kind again. "Danny, I want you to know something very important. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are exactly the kind of person that makes humanity strong. Do you know why?" Danny shook his head, still too amazed to speak. "Because you face challenges every day that most people never have to think about, and you still smile. You still come to restaurants like this and make friends with people from other worlds. You still celebrate your birthday and enjoy life. That takes real courage." Jake stood up and addressed the entire restaurant, his voice clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, humans and aliens alike, let me introduce you to Danny Martinez. He's 12 years old today. He loves learning about alien cultures, and he represents the very best of what humanity can be." A few people began to clap. Then more joined in. Soon the entire restaurant was applauding, with alien customers making their own species versions of approval sounds. The Zeltharians hummed in harmony, the Mantoids clicked in rhythm, and the Korthians made musical chirping noises. Danny's face lit up with the biggest smile he had ever worn. This was turning out to be the best birthday of his life. But Jake wasn't finished with Kyle Peterson yet. After the applause died down, Jake Sullivan pulled up a chair and sat down next to Danny's table. He ignored Kyle Peterson completely, focusing all his attention on the birthday boy. The waiter stood there awkwardly, not sure if he should leave or stay. "So, Danny," Jake said with genuine interest, "your mother mentioned you like learning about alien cultures. That's one of my favorite subjects too. What's the most interesting thing you've learned recently?" Danny's eyes lit up with excitement. The embarrassment from Kyle's cruel words was already fading away, replaced by the thrill of talking to his hero. "Well, I just read about how Zeltharian children don't learn to speak until they're 5 years old, but they can communicate through color changes in their skin from the time they're babies." Jake nodded appreciatively. "That's absolutely right. I once attended a Zeltharian family celebration where I watched a 2-year-old have an entire conversation with her grandmother just through skin patterns. It was beautiful to see." The 3 Zeltharian diplomats at the nearby table looked surprised and pleased. One of them, Ambassador Kethva, stood up and approached their table. His purple skin shifted to lighter shades, which Jake knew meant happiness and respect. "Young human Danny," Ambassador Kethva said through his translator device, "your knowledge of our ways brings honor to both our species. Would you like to learn how to say happy birthday in Zeltharian?" Danny nodded eagerly, and the ambassador taught him a series of skin color changes that spelled out the birthday greeting. Danny couldn't change his skin color, of course, but he practiced the pattern by pointing to different colored objects on the table. The ambassador laughed with delight and told him he was a natural diplomat. Jake smiled as he watched this interaction. This was exactly what humanity needed more of. Young people who were curious about other species and eager to build friendships across the stars. "Danny," Jake said, "let me tell you about some of the most amazing humans I've met in my travels." There was Captain Maria Santos, who designed the first spacecraft that could carry both human and mantoid crew members safely. She was born without her left arm, but she became one of the best engineers in the galaxy. Danny listened with complete attention as Jake continued. Then there was Dr. Robert Kim, who created the universal language translation system we all use today. He was deaf from birth, but he understood communication better than anyone I've ever met. His invention has helped millions of beings talk to each other across the galaxy. Lisa Martinez wiped tears from her eyes as she listened to Jake's stories. She had always told Danny that his disability didn't define him, but hearing it from someone as respected as Commander Sullivan made the words feel more real and powerful. "And there was my own brother Tommy," Jake said quietly. "He used a wheelchair just like yours, Danny. He became the lead scientist on the project that built our first interstellar research station. When he died 5 years ago, representatives from 30 different alien species came to his funeral to honor his work." Jake looked directly at Kyle Peterson, who was still standing nearby with his mouth hanging open. You see, Kyle, what you don't understand is that humanity's greatest strength has never been our physical perfection. It's our ability to overcome challenges, to support each other, and to see potential where others see problems. The Mantoid. Traders had moved closer to listen to Jake's stories. One of them, Elder Chicktar, clicked respectfully and spoke through his translator. Commander Sullivan speaks truth patterns. We have observed that humans who face great challenges often develop great wisdom and strength. That's exactly right, Elder Chicktar, Jake replied. In my experience, the humans who have contributed the most to our civilization are often those who had to work the hardest to find their place in the world. Jake turned back to Danny. Tell me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a xenobiologist, Danny said without hesitation. I want to study alien life forms and help humans understand how different species live and think. Maybe I could work on one of the research stations near the Andromeda colonies. That's a wonderful goal, Jake said. Do you know that the head of xenobiology at the Galactic Research Institute uses a mobility chair? Dr. Sarah Foster has discovered 17 new forms of alien plant life and written 3 books that are required reading in universities across the galaxy. Danny's eyes grew wide. He had read Dr. Foster's books but never knew she had a disability like his. Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. Danny, this is my personal communicator. It has direct connections to research stations throughout the galaxy. I want you to have it as a birthday present. Danny stared at the device in amazement. But Commander, this must be worth a fortune. I can't accept something so valuable. You're wrong about its value, Danny, Jake said with a smile. Its real value comes from what you'll do with it. I want you to use it to contact alien researchers and learn from them. I want you to build the bridges between species that will make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Lisa Martinez was crying openly now. Commander Sullivan, this is too generous. We don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Jake replied. Just promise me that Danny will keep learning and growing and showing the galaxy what humanity is really about. Kyle Peterson finally found his voice. Commander, I'm really sorry about what I did. I didn't understand. Jake stood up and faced the young waiter. His expression was serious, but not unkind. Kyle, apologies are important, but they're just the beginning. What matters now is what you do next. You have a choice to make about what kind of person you want to be. Jake looked around the restaurant at all the alien customers who were still watching and listening. Every human who lives and works in space is an ambassador for our species, whether they realize it or not. The aliens we meet judge all of humanity based on how we behave. That's a big responsibility, but it's also a great opportunity. Jake put his hand on Danny's shoulder. This young man understands that responsibility better than most adults. He treats every alien he meets with curiosity and respect. He learns about their cultures and celebrates their differences. That's what makes him a true representative of humanity. The restaurant erupted in applause again, this time even louder than before. Alien customers throughout the dining room stood up to show their respect for Danny and Jake's words. The Corthian family approached their table to ask Danny questions about human culture. A group of young Andromedans invited him to visit their ship and see their star charts. Kyle Peterson watched all of this happen and finally began to understand what he had almost destroyed. He had come close to turning Danny's birthday into a nightmare. But more importantly, he had nearly damaged the relationships that people like Jake Sullivan had spent years building. As the celebration continued around Danny's table, Jake pulled Kyle aside for a private conversation. It was time for the young waiter to learn what it really meant to be human in a galaxy full of different species. 3 hours later, news of what happened at Earth's Kitchen had spread throughout Nexus Prime Station. The story traveled through the communication networks faster than anyone could have imagined. Alien diplomats, traders, and tourists were all talking about the human boy who impressed Commander Sullivan and the waiter who learned an important lesson about humanity. Danny Martinez sat in his family's quarters, still holding the communicator that Jake Sullivan had given him. His mother was in the kitchen making him a second birthday cake, humming happily as she worked. The first celebration at the restaurant had been wonderful, but she wanted to make sure her son's special day continued at home. The communicator buzzed with an incoming message. Danny looked at the screen and couldn't believe what he saw. It was a message from Dr. Sarah Foster, the famous xenobiologist who worked at the Galactic Research Institute. "Hello, Danny." Dr. Foster's voice came through the device. "Commander, Sullivan told me about your interest in studying alien life forms. I would love to talk with you about your career goals. Would you like to visit my laboratory next week?" Danny's hands shook with excitement as he replied to the message. Dr. Foster was one of his heroes, and now she wanted to meet him in person. He could hardly believe this was really happening. Another message arrived, this time from a group of Zeltharian students at the station's cultural center. They wanted to invite Danny to join their study group about interspecies communication. Ambassador Kethva had told them about Danny's knowledge of their language and customs, and they were impressed by his eagerness to learn. Then came a message from Captain Elena Rodriguez, who commanded one of the human research ships docked at the station. She had heard about Danny's birthday celebration and wanted to invite him for a tour of her ship's science laboratories. Her crew included members from 5 different alien species, and she thought Danny would enjoy meeting them. Danny's mother came into the room carrying a chocolate cake with 12 candles. She saw her son's face glowing with happiness as he read message after message on his new communicator. "Mom, look at all these invitations," Danny said excitedly. "Scientists and diplomats and ship captains all want to meet me. This is the best birthday ever." Lisa Martinez smiled as she set down the cake. "You've always been special, sweetheart. Today the rest of the galaxy just figured that out too." Meanwhile, in the station's security office, Kyle Peterson sat across from Station Commander Helen Price. The older woman had served in the Human Diplomatic Corps for 20 years before taking command of Nexus Prime, and she was known for being both fair and firm. "Kyle," Commander Price said seriously, "what you did tonight could have caused major problems for human-alien relations. Do you understand that?" Kyle nodded miserably. After Jake Sullivan's lecture, he was beginning to understand just how badly he had messed up. "Yes, ma'am. I was stupid and cruel, and I'm sorry." "Sorry is a good start," Commander Price replied, "but actions have consequences. Earth's Kitchen has fired you, of course, but more importantly, you need to understand why your behavior was so dangerous." She activated a holographic display that showed news reports from across the galaxy. "Look at these headlines, Kyle. Human child celebrates birthday with alien friends. Commander Sullivan shows true human values. Disabled boy becomes symbol of human strength." Kyle read the headlines with growing amazement. The story had reached news networks on dozens of worlds. Alien journalists were writing articles about human compassion and the importance of protecting vulnerable members of society. "This could have gone very differently," Commander Price continued. "If Jake Sullivan hadn't intervened, the headlines might have read Humans Reject Disabled Child or Human Cruelty Shocks Alien Witnesses. Can you imagine what that would have done to our relationships with other species?" Kyle felt sick to his stomach as he thought about the alternative timeline. His cruel words could have damaged humanity's reputation across the galaxy. "I have a proposal for you," Commander Price said. "Instead of sending you back to Earth in disgrace, I'm going to give you a chance to make things right. You're going to work with our Cultural Liaison Office for the next 6 months. You'll learn about alien cultures, help with community outreach programs, and see firsthand how important it is for humans to treat each other with respect." Kyle looked up with surprise. "You're giving me another chance?" Commander Sullivan requested. "It personally," Price replied. "He believes that people can change and grow if they're given the right opportunities. But Kyle, this is your only chance. If you mess up again, you'll be on the next transport back to Earth." Kyle nodded eagerly. He didn't fully understand yet what it meant to be a good human ambassador to the galaxy, but he was willing to learn. Across the station, in the diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Kethva was sending a report to the Zeltharian government. His message was very different from what he had planned to write earlier in the evening. "The human species continues to demonstrate remarkable capacity for growth and compassion," he wrote. "Today I witnessed their ability to transform a moment of cruelty into a celebration of diversity and strength. The young human Danny Martinez embodies the best qualities of his species, and Commander Sullivan's intervention showed wisdom and leadership that deserves our respect. The Mantoid traders, Elder Chikhtar and his colleague, were having a similar conversation as they prepared to leave the station. Their original plan had been to recommend reducing trade with human colonies, but now they were discussing ways to increase cultural exchanges between their species. The human child showed genuine interest in our customs. Elder Chikhtar clicked to his companion. Perhaps we should invite more human students to visit our homeworld. They seem eager to learn about other ways of life. At the research laboratories, Dr. Sarah Foster was already planning Danny's visit. She had been inspired by Jake Sullivan's stories about the boy's intelligence and curiosity. She decided to organize a special presentation about her work, including video calls with alien researchers throughout the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez was also making plans. She contacted her crew members from different species and asked them to prepare presentations about their homeworlds. She wanted Danny's ship tour to be educational as well as exciting. By the end of the night, Danny had received over 50 messages from humans and aliens throughout the station. Scientists wanted to share their research with him. Diplomats invited him to cultural events. Ship captains offered to show him their vessels. Even some of the alien children on the station sent messages asking if he wanted to be friends. Jake Sullivan returned to his own quarters late that night, feeling satisfied with how the day had ended. He sent a message to his assistant asking her to clear his schedule for the next week. He wanted to personally make sure that all of Danny's new opportunities worked out well. As he prepared for bed, Jake thought about his brother Tommy and wished he could have seen what happened tonight. Tommy would have been proud to know that. Another young person with challenges was being celebrated instead of hidden away. The ripple effects of one act of kindness were spreading throughout the galaxy, creating opportunities and friendships that would last for years to come. 6 months after Danny Martinez's birthday dinner at Earth's Kitchen, Nexus Prime Station was hosting its annual Cultural Unity Festival. The celebration brought together representatives from over 100 different species to share their traditions, art, and knowledge with each other. In the main conference hall, Danny Martinez sat at a podium wearing a special ceremonial robe that had been given to him by the Zeltharian diplomats. At 13 years old, he was the youngest person ever invited to speak at the festival's opening ceremony. His mobility chair was decorated with friendship symbols from dozens of alien species. The audience was packed with humans and aliens of all kinds. In the front row sat Jake Sullivan, beaming with pride as he watched the boy who had become like a nephew to him. Next to Jake sat Dr. Sarah Foster, who had become Danny's mentor over the past 6 months. Ambassador Ketheva and Elder Chikhtar were there too, along with hundreds of other beings who had been touched by Danny's story. Friends from across the galaxy, Danny began, his voice clear and confident. 6 months ago, I thought I knew what it meant to be different. I thought being in a mobility chair made me less valuable than other people. I was wrong. The audience listened in complete silence as Danny continued his speech. He had become an excellent public speaker during his months of visiting different species and learning about their cultures. I learned that being different doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong in ways that other people can't understand. When you face challenges every day, you learn how to solve problems. When you have to work harder than others, you become more determined. When people underestimate you, you become more creative. Danny looked directly at Kyle Peterson, who was sitting in the middle section of the audience. The former waiter had spent 6 months working with the Cultural Liaison Office, and the experience had completely changed his understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of different species. But the most important thing I learned, Danny said, is that strength comes from helping others, not from putting them down. Real strength means standing up for people who need support. It means celebrating differences instead of hiding them. The audience began to applaud, but Danny raised his hand to continue. Today I want to share with you some of the amazing things I've discovered about our galaxy. Did you know that on the planet Zelthara, children with disabilities are considered to be blessed with special wisdom? Did you know that Mantoid culture believes that individuals who face physical challenges develop stronger mental abilities? Danny activated a holographic display that showed images from his travels to different ships and stations. I've spent the past 6 months meeting aliens from dozens of worlds, and I've learned that almost every intelligent species has members who face challenges similar to mine. And in almost every case, those individuals contribute something special to their communities. The display showed pictures of Danny working with alien scientists, learning from alien engineers, and playing with alien children. In every image, he was smiling and engaged, clearly enjoying every moment of his experiences. The Corthian engineer who designed the fastest starship engines in the galaxy was born without the use of her back legs. The Andromedan composer who wrote the most beautiful music in their history was born without hearing. The Zeltharian mathematician who solved the equations for faster-than-light travel has a condition that makes it hard for him to walk. Jake Sullivan wiped tears from his eyes as he listened to Danny's speech. The boy had grown so much in confidence and knowledge over the past 6 months. More importantly, he had become a bridge between species, helping aliens understand that humans valued all members of their society. "But I want to tell you about the most important lesson I learned," Danny said, his voice growing stronger. "It came from a human who taught me that standing up for others is what makes us truly strong. Commander Jake Sullivan showed me that when we protect the people who need help, we show the galaxy who we really are." The entire audience turned to look at Jake, who stood up and bowed humbly as applause filled the hall. Danny continued, "Commander, Sullivan didn't just defend me that night at the restaurant. He defended the idea that every human life has value. He showed our alien friends that humanity's strength comes from our diversity, not from our sameness." In the audience, Kyle Peterson was crying quietly. He had spent 6 months learning about alien cultures and working with disabled humans and aliens on the station. The experience had taught him that his old beliefs about perfect and imperfect people were not just wrong, but dangerous. Kyle had written letters to Danny and his mother, apologizing for his behavior and asking for forgiveness. He had also written reports for the Cultural Liaison Office about what he had learned from working with different communities. His supervisor had told him that his transformation was one of the most complete attitude changes she had ever seen. "Today I'm announcing a new program," Danny said, bringing the audience's attention back to his speech. "The Unity Bridge Project will connect young people from different species so they can learn from each other. Human children will study with alien children, and alien children will visit human schools and families." The audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. Several alien diplomats stood up to show their approval. Ambassador Kethova's skin changed to the brightest purple color possible, indicating extreme happiness and excitement. "This program exists because of all the people who believed in me," Danny said. "My mother, who never let me think I was less than anyone else. Commander Sullivan, who showed me what true strength looks like. Dr. Foster, who taught me that curiosity is the most important tool any scientist can have. And even Kyle Peterson, who learned that people can change and grow if they're willing to work at it." Kyle looked up in surprise. He hadn't expected Danny to mention him in a positive way. "The Unity Bridge Project will help thousands of young beings learn that differences make us stronger, not weaker. It will show the galaxy that cooperation is better than competition, and that understanding is better than fear." As Danny finished his speech, the entire audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Aliens from dozens of species made their traditional sounds of approval, creating a symphony of celebration that echoed throughout the station. Jake Sullivan walked up to the podium and put his arm around Danny's shoulders. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "this young man represents the very best of what humanity can become. He has shown us that our greatest strength lies not in our technology or our weapons, but in our ability to care for each other and build bridges with our neighbors among the stars." The celebration continued for hours, with representatives from different species coming up to congratulate Danny and pledge support for his Unity Bridge project. Kyle Peterson waited until the very end, then approached Danny with tears in his eyes. "Danny," Kyle said quietly, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that you changed my life. You taught me what it really means to be human." Danny smiled and offered Kyle his hand. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Kyle. That's what being human is all about." As the festival continued around them, Jake Sullivan looked out at the crowd of humans and aliens celebrating together. His brother Tommy would have loved to see this day. The galaxy was becoming a better place, one act of kindness at a time.